Thank you to the Atlantic Council for International Cooperation for having me at this symposium. I am very pleased to be here. Our symposium theme, Through the Looking Glass, is a metaphor for a time when the world was unfamiliar, as if things had turned on their head. What makes this time of Corona so unfamiliar? Because so many things flipped. Our lives, our routines, our priorities flipped. What mattered? What was essential? What was valuable? They all flipped too. The frontliners in our health system, the people who restocked shelves and worked the checkout counters in our supermarkets, the cleaners who disinfected our streets and public places, the farmers who grew our food, the people who continued to deliver food and other essentials while we were locked down, the security people who made us feel safe, the media people who kept us informed. We realized they were indeed essential to our lives. And so, on some level, these changes brought us back to what was once familiar, and we are pleased. The question of what we value had so far been counted to what was there that we could count. But now there seemed to be a shift to placing a high value on life and those who promote life. In a sense, our world flicked back to where it was supposed to be, and we could see clearly through the looking glass. I would like, therefore, to turn our symposium theme on its head and say, the familiar word is back, and we shouldn't flip it back. But as we like what we see, let us recognize that we have to be critical of what was before. It is pretty much like the time after war, when violence has stopped. There's a yearning for what is there before the war, a yearning for the status quo ante. But as we discuss justice, equity, and strong institutions, which is our objective in the symposium, we may have to continue in our clear-headed way to writing the history of our time. History, they say, is a bad motorist. One of my favorite TV ads says. It rarely ever signals its intentions when it's taking a turn. This is that rarely ever moment. History is turning a page. Yes, there is something prophetic about this moment. It is a time to denounce, but it's also a time to announce. Something the wise Winnie Byanyima once said about poverty reduction has stayed with me and jolted me so much. It has made me rethink many of the things we do, including how we look at peace and security. She says, leave no one behind, but also let no one go too far ahead. It shifts the focus from the many poor to the few rich, nay, ultra rich, and points out in a stark way the structural issue as the main issue. Not the lack of reach of our poverty reduction programs, not the lack of reach, but the structural issue. For injustice and inequity are structural issues, meaning they are about relationships. That is, after all, what a structure is. It is nothing but a relationship. Who has power? Who doesn't have power? who benefits, who suffers. So it is important to denounce injustice and inequity, certainly. But it is equally important to announce what would make a society just and equal. In my work in peace building, I have found this shift in focus critical. Instead of studying war and violence, we shifted to studying peace. We asked, what does a peaceful society look like? It enabled us to shift our energies and our attention to building trust, ever so slowly, but resolutely, as the bedrock of a new relationship, because in the end, peace building is trust building. You all will recall Johann Galtung's conflict triangle, where the three sides are direct violence, cultural violence, and the apex is structural violence. Galtung names the stopping of direct violence as negative peace, and the stopping of cultural and structural violence as positive peace. Understanding what creates sustainable peace cannot be found in the study of violence alone. The Institute for Economics and Peace writes, and I quote, "A parallel can be drawn with medical science. The study of pathology has led us to numerous breakthroughs in our understanding of how to treat and cure disease. However, it was only when medical science turned its focus to the study of healthy human beings that we understood what we needed to do to stay healthy. Physical exercise, a good mental disposition, and a balanced diet are some examples. This could only be learned by studying what was working. In the same way, the study of conflict is different from the study of peace, producing very different outcomes. The Institute for Economics and Peace has been very instructive in our understanding of what makes a society peaceful. In Davao City in the Philippines, where I work, we shifted our focus from counterinsurgency to peace building, using the 8 pillars of positive peace as our framework. The 8 pillars were derived by the Institute for Economics and Peace from almost 5,000 data sets and studies. The 8 pillars are the following: a well-functioning government, low levels of corruption, acceptance of the rights of others, good relations with our neighbors, sound business environment, high levels of human capital, equitable distribution of resources, and free flow of information. Needless to say, gender cuts across each one of these pillars. So, the study of what makes a just and equal society should be beneficial for us as we work on achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 16. What are the barriers we need to confront to effect social change? I see 3 barriers: conceptual, technical, and political. The first barrier, conceptual. Concepts are our mindsets, our frames. A framing story, the Frameworks Institute says, gives people direction, values, vision, and inspiration. By providing a framework for their lives, it tells them who they are, where they come from, where they are and what's going on, where things are going, and what they should do. And here I will quote the Frameworks Institute as a way of providing examples about framing. Number one, if our framing story tells us that the purpose of life is for individuals or nations to accumulate an abundance of possessions and to experience the maximum amount of pleasure during the maximum number of minutes of our short lives, then we will have little reason to manage our consumption. Number two, if our framing story says we are in life and death competition with each other, then we will have little reason to seek reconciliation and collaboration and nonviolent resolutions to our conflicts. And three, but if our framing story tells us that we are free and responsible creatures in a creation made by a good, wise, and loving God, and that our Creator wants us to pursue virtue, collaboration, peace, and mutual care for one another and all living creatures, then our society will take a radically different direction, and our world will become a very different place. Concepts are also scripts that exclude and marginalize certain groups of people. I will name only two of those powerful scripts that leave women out of peace negotiations, for example. First, that the peace negotiation table is for war actors only. The war actors are men, so only men get to sit at the table. That's a powerful script. A second script, there's only one table, and that's the peace negotiating table between the rebel group and the government. That concept shuts out the public, whose lives will be impacted by the peace agreement. Another concept, one of the definitions that crept so maliciously into our vocabulary and practice, our vocabulary and practice as people involved in social change, is the word empowerment. I often find it in mission statements of very well-meaning organizations. For example, quote, "We empower women, children, or whoever else." And I cringe when I hear that. We empower them. I say, no one empowers anyone else. Only the person himself or herself can do that. We can facilitate the enabling environment that will allow individuals to empower themselves, but that decision, and it is a decision, must be theirs alone, or we are kidding ourselves. The second barrier is the technical barrier. To work on Sustainable Development Goal number 16, we need the myriad skills in peace building, including advocacy, organizing, communicating, and policy making. It is important to ensure that capacity building is open to groups, especially those traditionally marginalized and excluded. The third barrier, the political barrier, is about power and influence. A feminist once said that power is taking one's place in whatever discourse is necessary for action and to have one's part matter. How will our part matter? In the Mindanao negotiations here in my country, and currently in the implementation of the resulting agreement, there were many women playing various roles, not only in the negotiating panel, but also in the technical working groups and advocacy groups. The most effective ones were those who came from movements. They understood and had the skills to navigate the power dynamics inherent in peace processes. They had influence within the negotiations and now in the implementation, not only because of their substantive knowledge, but also for their connections to constituencies that mattered. The women in both parties of the negotiations experienced in coalition building reached across the aisle to enable gender responsive provisions to be included in the peace agreement. Most important of all, they understood their participation in the peace process in the context of their advocacy for social transformation and continued the advocacy whenever and wherever it was possible. For the longest time, I was afraid of claiming power because I saw power as manipulative, dishonest, even violent. So I decided to redefine power myself, the kind of power I would claim. My definition of power now is this: power is the potency to act for what is good. 3 operative words: potency, act, good. Capacity, action, value. That is transformative power. That I will claim. We can see that all 3 barriers are interlinked and must be addressed simultaneously. Silo thinking has kept us ineffective, so we must target all these cultural, conceptual, technical, and political barriers in order to succeed. Now let us look at the other element in sustainable development and goal number 16, involving weak institutions. Again, I go back to a simple definition. If structures are relationships, what are institutions? Institutions are nothing but sets of rules. That's why when we say, let us institutionalize what we are doing, we are saying, let us set the rules so that those who follow are benefited and those who violate are punished. This is the part where we need to develop models of justice and equality and then institutionalize them. Let us announce the models of equality we have developed through years of working for transformation. It is time for these models to be scaled up so that they become the core of the new system. Mind you, it's not easy because it needs a lot of creativity and fortitude to arrange and rearrange relationships and ways of doing things, of rules, but once we have a model, nobody can say it cannot be done. So by the way, who better to be a significant part of the arranging and rearranging we need to do than women, especially now in what we hope will be a post-COVID world. Women arrange and rearrange every single day, at home, at work, in the community, in the country, and yes, in the world. So what power shall we claim for ourselves from our experiences and insights in the time of Corona? First, the power of community. Not leaving anyone behind and not letting anyone go too far ahead. If people cooperate, they will achieve better outcomes and more durable solutions than if they act alone. People will live longer, be more prosperous, and live more secure lives. Second, the power of the better angels of our nature. Love and caring, generosity, empathy. Third, the power of local action, because people are more confident to act for change in their local space, and therefore broad and democratic participation is possible and will be the bedrock of our new world. Fourth, the power of not only local action, because change needs to penetrate the systems and structures that oppress and exploit people internationally and nationally. Although the connectedness of many countries allowed the pandemic to spread, it also brought advantages. The connectivity and ability to problem solve at a global level had a huge impact. Our ability to distribute test kits, share medical knowledge, and develop solutions together saved countless lives. We need to build these collaborative techniques further and lean away from isolation and nationalism to combat future global threats. Fifth, the power of cultivating peaceableness as an action concept. Elise Boulding calls it a constant shaping and reshaping of understandings, situations, and behaviors in a constantly changing world to sustain well-being for all. This is a far cry from stereotyped notions of peace as a dull, unchanging end state. A static image of peace after reflecting human inactivity is dramatically opposed to the characteristics of peace as a process of peace building, as adventure, exploration, and willingness to venture into the unknown. Peaceableness is an action concept. It never stops. It is constantly shaping and reshaping. It is a process. Peace building, Elise Boulding says, is an adventure, exploration, and willingness to venture into the unknown. You and I are the critical yeast. John Paul Lederach, the eminent peace theorist and practitioner, says that oftentimes the smallest ingredient, yeast, is what makes the dough rise. Lederach says that critical yeast is what drives potential change and is necessary to make the other ingredients grow. So for us, which people, if brought together, would have a capacity to generate peace and allow it to grow exponentially? A few strategically placed people have greater potential for creating social growth than large numbers of people who think alike. But we have to be connected to one another and create a platform from which we will act in big and small ways together. As I end, I want to leave you with one more power. The power of the awesome end. A and D. The power of the three-letter word as against the most devastating two-letter word in the English language. Or. The two-letter word has led to wars, genocide, and the most brutal atrocities. The devastating me or you, us or them, my religion or your religion, my tribe or your tribe. Instead of the devastating or, we should claim the awesome end. Us and them, me and you, my religion and your religion, my tribe and your tribe. Everything and everyone is connected. Nobody stands alone. A and D. The awesome end is the antidote to anger and fear. Let us claim this power in our practice as we denounce and announce the structures and institutions that will make us see a just and peaceful world through the looking glass. Thank you very much.